All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here today. On behalf of the Environmental Finance Center Network, welcome to our webinar, Community-Based Public-Private Partnerships, Insights from Milwaukee's Fresh Coast Green Communities Program. My name is Kristen Crew from the Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center. Before we begin, we're going to go over a few logistics and then we can get started. During the webinar today, everyone will be kept on mute to ensure audio quality. If you have a question, please type it into the GoToWebinar question dialog box anytime throughout the session. We will be saving your questions for a facilitated Q&A session at the end of the presentation. After the webinar, you'll receive a follow-up email that includes a link to the recording and other information you may need. You can also download the slides from today in the Handouts tab in your GoToWebinar control panel. This webinar has not been submitted for pre-approval of continuing education credits, but eligible attendees will receive a certificate of attendance for their personal record. To receive a certificate for this session, you must attend for the entire session and register and attend individually using your real name and unique email address. Certificates will be sent via email within 30 days of the webinar date. If you have questions or if you need assistance, please contact smallsystems@syr.edu. Now for a little bit about us. The Environmental Finance Center Network provides training and technical assistance to small water and wastewater systems in all U.S. states and territories through our building technical, managerial, and finance capacity programs. If your community or utility needs assistance with drinking water or wastewater system management, please feel free to contact us through our request form, which I will be sharing shortly in the chat. An example of one of the many great ways the EFCN can provide assistance to your community or utility is through our free funding application support. Are you struggling with an infrastructure funding application, falling short on funding for a project, or simply don't know where to start? EFCN can help with that. Reach out to us through our request form and receive tailored support based on your project needs. And on that note, we can go ahead and get started. I am happy to introduce our speakers for today. We are delighted to be joined by April Mendez, the CEO, and Jim Sparber, the VP of Engineering, both joining us from Greenprint Partners. Thank you both for joining us today. And April, I will go ahead and hand it over to you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Kristen. Hi, everybody. It's great to have you with us today. I go ahead and share my screen, and Kristen, just let me know if we're having any challenges with seeing the screen. So as Kristen said, we have myself and our VP of Engineering, Jim Sparber, on the call today. Jim is our Vice President of Engineering at Greenprint Partners and oversees the design and construction and engineering practice at Greenprint, and is the program manager for the Fresh Coast Green Communities program in Milwaukee, which will be the core topic of today's webinar. I, as CEO, really bring a community centering background to the work that Greenprint does, and that enables us to really focus our work on always being community centered in the way that we develop infrastructure programs. So the goals that we have for today's webinar are first to help you develop a stronger understanding of the fundamentals of a CBP3, which is a community-based public-private partnership, particularly as the CBP3 is designed for transparency. Secondly, to understand the drivers of why communities opt for a CBP3 approach. Thirdly, losing my screen here, hold on one second, to see an example of that CBP3 as applied through the Fresh Coast Green Communities program in Milwaukee. And then finally, to learn how the CBP3 structure could be used, particularly by smaller municipalities and for more dispersed infrastructure projects. And before we get into the webinar content, we'd love to hear a little bit from you all and see who's present in the audience today. So we're using a Slido poll, and the way that you participate in this is either you can use your phone to scan the QR code on the top left-hand corner, or you can just open your browser and go to slido.com, and you'll enter in this participant code 1700-172. So go ahead and do that now. And our first poll for today is, what size of population do you serve? Great, so it looks like we've got about 21 folks responding here, and about half of our respondents are serving populations of less than 10,000, so that'll be about 10 communities or 10 respondents from small communities. And then a breakdown of the rest of the sizes above 10,000, with about maybe 5 folks coming in from communities that are in the 50,000 to 250,000 population range, about 5 folks in the greater than 250,000 population range, and then about 2 folks in the 10,000 to 50,000 range. That's really helpful as context for how we'll be speaking today. And then a second poll is, how familiar are you with the concept of a CBP3? Here you'll have options of rating between 1 and 5, with 1 being, today is my first introduction to a CBP3, and 5 is I'm already an expert implementer of CBP3s. All right, we'll go ahead and see how we're doing. More people coming in on this one. All right, so it looks like we have a lot of folks here today who are getting a very first introduction to CBP3s. About 75% of those who have responded thus far, and nobody who just raised their hand to say I'm an experienced implementer. So we've got a good range in the middle, but a lot of folks who are hearing about this for the first time today. This is great. Thank you. All right.
Okay, so there's a number of definitions out there. We'll start with a definition of what a CBP3 is. There's a number of definitions that are out there, and this is Greenprint Partners' adaptation of the various definitions that we've come across. So a community-based public-private partnership is a partnership, and I highlight that word partnership, between local governments, private sector partners, and community stakeholders to implement sustainable water infrastructure. Infrastructure is also an important key to this. Infrastructure projects with measurable benefits that are valued by the community. So what I'll call your attention to on this is what's not in this definition. So when we talk to folks a lot, the idea of a CBP3 needing to be a fixed price contract structure, or that financing somehow needs to be involved. In our definition, these may be a part of a CBP3, but they aren't a required element of a CBP3 program. So yeah, and you'll see that as we talk a little bit more about the program that we were working on in Milwaukee. Okay, so why would you consider a CBP3 delivery structure? So what elements of a program would make it the right type of fit for a CBP3? So it would be something where you're looking to do a deployment that is fast. So speed of deployment is important if you're looking to move quickly. And a second characteristic would be if there is not a direct path that is known between where you're at and where you want to be. So flexibility is important as you go on the journey to getting to where you want to be or what you want to accomplish. And then the third thing is risk allocation. If you're a public entity, is there a better way to allocate risk to a private partner that you can't really address as well as a private partner could? Okay, so looking a little bit further into this, we've identified 8 different elements that we consider to be fundamental to the CBP3, a transparent CBP3. The first one is the program structure matching the needs and enabling conditions of the public partner. So every community and program is different. So there's no one size fits all approach. And you really need to identify what is unique about your program and your community, and then tailor the CBP3 to that. The second thing that we identified is that it's a partnership built on transparency, communication, and trust. I think there's a good argument that says transparency and communication build trust, but those 3 components are very important. So it's hard to foresee all the potential situations that might arise as you're on your journey from where you're at to accomplishing the goals of the program. So at some point, no matter how tight your contract is written, it likely won't address an issue, and you're going to need to trust your partner. So the third thing that we identified is that a private partner interfaces with the community in ways that build public trust and support. So the private partner is going to be seen by your community as an extension of the public agency. So you want to make sure that you are providing a way for that public partner to build trust. The fourth item is the public partner retains program control, but is open and adaptable to private partners' perspectives. So ultimately, the public partner is the one who is responsible to the community, to their ratepayers, to your constituents. So you want to retain a relatively high level of control of what happens in your program. The fifth item is the contract structure enables flexibility and adaptive management. As we indicated, there isn't a clear path from where you're at to where you want to be. So the private partner needs to find the most efficient way, and an overly restrictive contract structure won't allow them to do that. So there needs to be a good bit of flexibility in the contract structure. Sixth, target metrics are simple, straightforward, and achievable. So you really want the program metrics to be something that directly relate to the main program goals. We feel that adding a lot of secondary incentives or secondary goals within the program or the contract structure tend to be a distraction and remove the focus on what you're really trying to accomplish. Number 7, risks are shared fairly and thoughtfully. So each partner takes on the risks that are best managed by that partner. In a contract negotiation where the risks are not fair or they're unbalanced between the partners, that's going to reduce the trust, and that trust is very important, as we talked about a little bit before. And then finally, number 8, the program structure provides transparency to all stakeholders. So a lack of transparency yields a lack of trust and starts a deterioration in a relationship. So transparency is really important. For you as a public entity, you also want to have that transparency, so you have the answers for your stakeholders, for your community, your ratepayers, and so forth. Okay. So what type of project is an ideal CBP3? So the program or the project has outcomes-based goals. For example, if you are looking to say, and just say, I need to manage 400 acres of impervious runoff, that would be a good candidate for an outcomes-based program or a CBP3 with the outcome of managing those 400 acres. You don't know where those 400 acres are or how you're going to manage them. You just know you need to manage it. In contrast to that, if you said I want to build a bioretention basin in a particular park, that's a standalone project and not really a CBP3 type of project. Secondly, the program team needs diverse skills. So as a private partner, you can adapt more quickly and through staffing and subcontracting than a public entity would be able to do. And you don't know what those needs are going to be at the outset of your journey from where you're at to where you want to go. So, so having the ability and flexibility within a contract, CBP3 contract structure is important. And then finally, one of the C, I guess, in the CBP3 is the community. Programs or projects that have significant impacts on the community are a good fit for this type of program. So for example, a street resurfacing doesn't have a whole lot of long-term impact, doesn't change the environment of the community significantly. It really wouldn't be a good fit for a CBP3. However, if you're building stormwater bump outs in people's front yards that they're going to be living with for a long period of time, that is something that has significant impacts on the community, and a CBP3 would be a good solution for that type of program. Okay, so moving into the actual case study here, the Fresh Coast Green Communities program, which Greenprint is involved with in partnership with the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District. The goal here is to plan, build, and maintain green infrastructure on public and private properties through a program which we're calling the Fresh Coast Green Communities program. The program goals that are listed here are directly out of our contract with MMSD, and these are the higher level program goals. The goals are to have progress towards their WPDES 50 million gallon goal, so that is in their permit for discharge. Permit is to manage 50 million gallons of stormwater in green infrastructure. The goal is also to reduce the risk of CSOs, combined sewer overflows, sanitary sewer overflows, and regional flooding. Installation of GI on both combined sewer area and separate sewer areas. Increasing local GI capacity, so the capacity to deliver and care for green infrastructure through workforce development and mentoring. And then finally, identifying non-traditional funding sources that can aid in the program. Okay, so a little bit of history leading up to MMSD's use of the CBP3. So they had some issues with stormwater and combined sewer overflows, and did some studies in the early 2000s. And the result of that was the goal that they set to manage 740 million gallons of stormwater through green infrastructure by 2035, which is a pretty lofty goal. So from 2013 to 2018, they were working with a funding program or a grant program, and it was a somewhat traditional or standard grant program where there was a call for projects. Projects were selected, they were funded at 50% of the cost of the project, up to $1.95 per gallon. And then the participants were reimbursed at the end after they had actually built the project. So some of the challenges associated with that were that a lot of participants didn't have the cash flow to make that happen. They didn't have the 50% match that they needed, or they weren't able to pay the contractor and wait for the reimbursement just from a cash flow perspective. So MMSD decided, well, we got to do something different. So they moved to a CBP3 structure to try and increase the uptake or increase the amount of gallons that they are installing on an annual basis. So if you do the math here from 2019 to 2035 and 740 million gallons, that it's roughly 50 million gallons a year. So that's a significant amount of stormwater management that needs to happen over the next 15 years or so, starting in 2020. So we moved to the CBP3 process where they would have a project implementer or private partner come in, handle the program development and build the projects and manage the financing so that the private landowner didn't have to do that. Okay, so if you recall, one of the first item that we had that was important to a successful CBP3 was that the program structure matches the needs and enabling conditions of the public partner. So when we looked at that with MMSD, there was 4 conditions that really stuck out to us. One is that MMSD has conditions in their discharge permit, setting a goal of 50 million gallons of storage and green stormwater infrastructure with 40% of those gallons in the combined sewer area. So they're prescriptive in terms of where those gallons need to occur. Another confining condition to this program is that state law prohibits the design build and requires public bidding. So that means that we as the private partner could not enter into negotiated contracts with a construction partner. All that work needs to be publicly bid. The third item was that MMSD has the funding available for this program. They don't require any funding or financing really. So that really wasn't on the table as something that was of high importance to them. And then finally, MMSD has built a high level of community awareness around green infrastructure and developed the Fresh Coast brand. And they really wanted to protect and preserve that brand. Okay, so the model at a high level, the model that we're operating under in the Fresh Coast Green Communities program looks a little bit like this on this diagram here. So the 2 gray colored circles on either side are the funds that support the program. So MMSD, which is the blue circle on the left, the top, MMSD, they bring their capital budget to the program. We have a contract, and this is the only contract that MMSD holds as part of this program. They have a contract with us as the private partner program manager to deliver 6+ million gallons of stormwater storage for $20 million. And then Greenprint was able to secure some philanthropic funding to help support the community aspects of the program and do some things that MMSD, with an obligation to their rate holders, our ratepayers, was not really able to do, and use those funds in a way that went above and beyond. And so the philanthropic funds really supported that type of work. So Greenprint holds contracts with landowners and developers, along with local CBOs, to assist in working with and finding local community partners. So this is a high-level overview of how the program operates. So diving a little bit deeper, we are actually contracted under a guaranteed maximum price structure, contract structure. So we have a program that is basically divided up into 3 different parts. 10%, the slice that is in the yellow, the 10%, is dedicated to program management and origination work. So that's us just managing the overall program, as well as going out and finding eligible projects. The second part is the 20% that's allocated for professional services to design, manage construction, bidding, and the overall construction oversight work. So we have a 20% allocation for that work. And then the third part of this graph, the 70%, is the funds that are allocated to the actual construction work. And again, that needs to be publicly bid. So the way that we're structured is that we have an overall guaranteed maximum price for the entire project of $20 million. The program management at 10% is $2 million. So we have a maximum price of $2 million on the program management. And we have a third maximum price on professional services. So the 20% or $4 million is allocated to those funds. And that's a maximum, guaranteed maximum price. So the way the risks are shared, the 10% and the 20% are things that Greenprint can control. And so that we have hard caps on those. If we go over, then Greenprint needs to basically eat those costs, but still deliver the projects. The MMSD realized that because of the public bidding constraints, we only have so much control over what the costs are going to be because of inflation. As we all remember, the painful inflationary period that we just came through. They understand that those things are out of the control of us as the developer because we can't negotiate any of those costs. So our way of managing that risk and sticking within the guaranteed maximum price on those is to change out the type of programs or excuse me, projects that we bring to the table. Okay, so that's the overall program structure. And then in addition to that, we have a $1.2 million 5-year establishment period that is also included in our overall guaranteed maximum price. Okay, so if we look at a little more detail about the actual program implementation process, we have multiple steps here. The first step is that the private partner identifies the project opportunities that meet the program metrics. So Greenprint Partners does cold outreach, we do networking, work through referrals and so forth to find landowners who would be willing to participate in the program. Our next step is once we found a landowner who's interested, is to educate that landowner about the program and work with them to develop a high-level concept plan. So once they agree to that concept plan, we develop a project cost data and schedule estimates and so forth, and put together basically a project proposal that we will take to MMSD and put that before their technical team. So the next thing we do is take that to the technical team. They review the proposal and they either approve or deny the project. The technical team is made up of a green stormwater engineer, collection systems staff, construction management staff, stormwater modeling folks, so people who are really well versed in how their system operates and how any particular project that we bring to the table would fare in their system. So these first 4 steps are all paid under our project management and origination guaranteed maximum price cost. So that comes out of our $2 million. Step 5, once the project is approved, is that the private partner, that's us, we enter into an agreement with a landowner to go into full development of the project. And this is where we start working on the second part of our GMP, which is the $4 million or 20% of the total program value for professional services. So step 6, the private partner submits the design plans and essentially complete documents for MMSD's review and approval. So they're deeply involved in the process as we move along. And then they have final say over the approval of the final design. And once that happens, then we go into permitting with local agencies, so the city of Milwaukee or suburban communities that the project might happen to be in. And then we publicly bid the project. And we are beholden to take the lowest responsible bidder in accordance with normal procedures for public project bidding. And then step 8, enter into a construction contract with the general contractor to build the project. And we are asking our contractors to have a 30% small women, minority, and minority disadvantaged business enterprises goal. So that's part of our contract with them. And then once the project is constructed, MMSD reimburses us for the project. And then we move into the project's complete and we move into the establishment period, the 5-year establishment period. Okay, so that's basically how the program works. How are we doing on against our goals in the program? So the program launched in 2022, October of 2022. And then in 2024, there was a second project, or second RFP that came out for this work, and we were awarded that program as well. So that was an additional $10.5 million. So these goals are really for that are at the bottom here are for phase 1, which is the first contract, the $21.2 million contract. So our price per gallon goal was $3 per gallon. We are at $2.98 per gallon. Total gallons managed goal was 6 million gallons, and we are a little over 6 million gallons. The total gallons managed in a high impervious area. So the two metrics specifically in terms of project siting were that it needed to be either in a high impervious area or in the combined sewer area in an area of high SVI, which is a social vulnerability index. And the maps for those two areas are shown on the right-hand side of the slide here. So as you can see, the high SVI area within the CSSA is in close to the downtown area of Milwaukee. It's much more dense urban area, and being that it is a combined sewer and in a dense area, it's also more difficult to find highly effective projects in those areas in terms of cost per gallon. So our metrics were to find approximately 50% plus or minus 10% of our gallons in the high impervious area. We are actually at 61%, and then the remainder, so the remainder of the gallons are in the combined sewer area that are areas of high SVI, and we are currently at 39% on that. Our SWIMB participation, the small women minority business enterprises, the goal is 30%, and we're currently running at about 45%, so we're exceeding that goal as well. The other goal of the contract was to secure philanthropic investment, and we did that with a $600,000 investment to support community centering approaches that go above and beyond what MMSD can support with their ratepayer funds. So in that first phase of the 6 million gallons, we have 6 projects that are in the high impervious area that comprise the 61% of the total gallons. 6 projects at an average cost of $1.83 per gallon. And then within the area, the high SVI CSSA area, we have 14 projects, and that average cost per gallon is $4.56. So that's what phase 1 is at. Phase 2, right now we have a goal of 3 million gallons for that phase at $3 per gallon. We currently are at 4.4 million gallons at a cost of $2.11 per gallon. So we are significantly exceeding those goals. We have some good projects there that we were fortunate to be able to secure. So that's where we're at. So taking another step here and looking at how these fundamental elements of any CBP3 were particularly applied to the FCGC program. The first element was a program structure that matches the needs and enabling conditions of a public partner. We talked a little bit about this, but the program metrics that were defined for this program, the high impervious area requirements and the CSSO or CSSA siting requirements really address those fundamental needs to reduce peak flows and reduce CSOs and flooding within the community. Additionally, the fact that the way the program is structured, we brought some additional funding to the program to enhance it. And then the branding, of course, is something that is important to them, and we've carried their Fresh Coast brand throughout the program. The second item is the partnership is built on transparency, communication, and trust. And in the FCGC program, we have a high level of communication with our partners at MMSD, bi-weekly meetings with the MMSD PM, project manager. We have continual review of our concepts and drawings through the technical team. So they're always providing input and understand where we're at. On the construction side, they have full transparency to our bids. So all of the public bidding all bids are available for them to review. Any change orders to the contract are reviewed by MMSD as well. So they know where everything is at and what we're paying for. So they really are able to see every dollar, where every dollar that they're spending is going through the program. Item 3 on our list of fundamentals was a private partner interfaces with the community in ways that build public trust and support. So we're, as part of our program, anything that is our outreach work that is publicly facing, those materials are all reviewed by MMSD so that we are consistent in how we are presenting them to the public through this program. Additionally, MMSD staff will often attend our early meetings with landowners so that there is a feeling of consistency and continuity, that we are acting almost as an extension of their staff in this program. And then item 4 on our list was public partner retains program control but is open and adaptable to private partner perspective. So MMSD has ultimate authority over what projects might move forward. They can reject a project that we bring forward for any reason that they would choose. So they have the ultimate control over what happens with this program. The contract structure also recognizes that the private partners, that's us, Greenprint's inability to control construction cost in terms of inflation or in terms of just general market conditions. So they recognize that and understand that there has to be some flexibility around that. Okay, item 5, the contract structure enables flexibility and adaptive management. So as you can see with those metrics that we talked about, there's really only 2 primary metrics that we're looking at. So there's a lot of flexibility and adaptability that we're able to do in the types of projects that we bring forward that meet those program goals. So a lot of opportunity for us to work and find projects that will ultimately meet their goals and are good projects for the community as well. Item 6, target metrics are simple, straightforward, and achievable. So I just touched on that a little bit, but it's really easy for us to, based on those metrics, to understand if a project is going to be eligible or not, and they keep us focused on reducing those peak flows and CSOs and so forth. So yeah, that's an important part in our ability to move quickly and adapt and change. Item 7, the risks are shared fairly and thoughtfully. So we, as the private partner, accept the risks of the professional services, which are under our control. And we also accept the risk of spending time with opportunities and trying to get our landowners who are going to be involved in the program and evaluating whether or not those projects will move forward. So we have that risk as well on how we spend our time, because we do have a cap on that guaranteed maximum price on our origination portion of the program. Things that MMSD is accepting are inflationary risks, general market conditions, and those are really in deference to the idea that we can't we cannot negotiate prices, for example, under their rules and regulations that MMSD operates through. And then item 8 on the list was that the program structure provides transparency to all stakeholders. So we've talked about that. We are very open book in terms of where all the dollars go. Our invoices that we send to MMSD detail all the hours that were spent and the rate of individuals that are billing against those projects for all of our professional services. And then, of course, the construction contracts are publicly bid. We have all of our pay estimates. When we pay contractors, our change orders, all of that information is available to MMSD, as well as providing them with the agreements that we enter into with our landowners. Okay, so April, I think you got another poll for us here.
Yeah, so now we'd love to hear from you what you all would value most about this kind of model. This is a ranking poll, so there's a number of elements here that you can rank in order of how valuable they are to you. All right, we'll give you about 10 more seconds here. All right, it looks like most folks are particularly valuing the potential of this kind of model to improve relationship and trust with the community. That's really exciting to see, and that's something that we see, I would say, from pretty much every public partner that we work with, that there's a real desire to improve our relationships and to improve the perception of the utility, the municipality, and being able to have a program that really leads with community benefits as a core element to it, and that leverages a private partner that has the expertise and the kind of tone and approach to build that trust and relationships is really important. And then we've got access to specialized expertise from private partners, coming in pretty similarly with risk sharing on managing costs, cost transparency, risk sharing on achieving the desired metrics, and adaptive management. And I can't see the last one, so it's on here somewhere. Increased capacity from private partner, all look like those rank pretty similarly. Jim, is there anything you'd like to comment on there?
Yeah, I think, I'm sorry, can you scroll up to the number 1 again, please, April? Thank you. Sure. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, improve the relationship and trust with the community. Yeah, I think one of the things about this particular structure for a CBP3 that is valuable is that, you know, it allows us some time to do those types of things. We do that largely in our under the budget for our origination work, origination and program management work, and there's adequate budget to do that, and it's valued. It is an important component, and really the whole program needs to be based in that community trust as well. So
I'd mentioned too on that front, what was really critical to this process was the philanthropic funding that we secured at the very outset of the program. That $600,000 that gave us the additional capacity to develop a really thoughtful approach to working with community partners and to how we were engaging with each landowner and the project that landowner community supported. So that was really fundamental, and we trained the whole team of all of our subcontractors and all of our staff on that particular approach to make sure that everyone had the capacity and competency to be able to communicate in alignment with the community goals.
That's just one last thing on that, April, as well, that I would add is that, hats off to MMSD, because they did a lot of work ahead of this program in building trust in their community. So yeah, we started with from a really good place, and that MMSD had been working on their brand and building that brand for years. So that was really beneficial.
Great. And then we have one final poll. This is a word cloud. So just give us a word or a phrase. What do you see as the biggest constraints for your community's ability to implement a CBP3, or if you are a consultant who serves communities, the kinds of communities that you are serving? All right, we'll give you about 15 more seconds here. Okay. All right, funding is the #1 constraint. Excellent, we can address that. Looks like we also have just demand for attention, to be able to develop this kind of a program and pay attention to both the design of it at the front end and then the kind of management of it over time is a challenge. The financial situation of the community, unfamiliarity with CBP3s, my guess is also buy-in around CBP3s and this kind of alternative contracting, alternative procurement structure, disruption of current land use. So how do you get those landowners and these various properties to participate when given the existing assumptions around how that land is being used? So a number of important elements here. Jim, would you like to comment on some of these?
Yeah, I think funding is a challenge, right? That's a CBP3 is not going to. CBP3 partners can assist you in applying for funding, but at the end of the day, they can provide financing and not necessarily funding, right? So you gotta pay them back somehow. So having that established funding source is really important. Sometimes that may be grant money, although that obviously is slowing down a little bit here. That was a lot of that available. It seems to be slowing down. But establishing a stormwater utility, if you're looking at a stormwater related one or other ways of funding that through your your typical funding structures. That's a lot of hard work to do that, but it needs to be there. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say too that the private partner that you're working with has expertise in a lot of different funding sources. Their ability to help you select, prioritize, go after the right funding sources from a philanthropic perspective can be really beneficial. And then the other element that I'm seeing here is just the cooperation from private landowners, and that was one of the fundamental aspects of why MMSD went for a CBP3 and wanted to work with a group like Greenprint, who's developed that expertise in how you get landowners on board with something like this, and how you do the contracting with those landowners as well.
All right, so knowing that there were going to be some smaller, less than 10,000 size communities on this today, we thought we'd do a little brainstorming about how does a CBP3 maybe work for someone who is a small community. So some of those ideas, if under the stormwater areas, we're seeing some of the permitting at this point. Some out in California, the MS4 permitting there is being done where multiple communities are all under a singular permit. So it's more of a watershed-based approach. Here in Illinois, we're based in Chicago, and here in Illinois, there is starting to be some more discussion about watershed-based approaches when it comes to MS4 permitting. So I think that opens the door to the possibility of a CBP3 where it's the collective of multiple municipalities in a singular watershed, all trying to achieve the outcome of meeting an MS4 permit for water quality or whatever it might be. So the 3 bullet points there are listed. These were the three kind of basic pretenses for whether or not a CBP3 would be appropriate for a project type. So I tried to address those in the comments there. I'm not going to read through them. Yeah, so that was one thing we were thinking about. The second thing that we thought about is lead service line replacement and adapting the CBP3 structure to that type of a situation where, we know a lot of communities have dispersed infrastructure throughout their community. They have lead services. They're maybe not exactly sure where they're even at. So it makes it a little bit hard to just go out and hire a contractor to replace the lead service lines when you don't know where they're at. You're going to be coming onto private property, so you really need to have some specialized talent in terms of how to communicate that to a landowner or a resident, how to communicate what you're doing and why and what the implications are to their health and so forth. So we thought that a lead service line replacement program might be something as well, and also understanding that the time frame on the lead service line replacement is pretty short. So a CBP3, may be a way to accelerate your time frame there to meet the requirements for lead service line removals. So yeah, it's just some thoughts. I think, yeah, maybe at this time we'll just a few minutes maybe for questions and answers, if we can move to that.
Great, thank you both so much. So we did have a couple of questions that came in. Start at the top. So what do the landowners gain from the projects? Are they compensated financially? And if so, how much of the budget goes toward landowner compensation?
Yes.
Sure. So the landowners are not paid directly for their time. The primary benefit that they're gaining is the beautification, landscape transformation elements of what's happening on their property, as well as if they do have drainage issues on the property, that those drainage issues are going to be addressed. And when we talk to landowners, We try to ascertain what's going to be most important to them in terms of the physical improvements, the community improvements, et cetera, that would be part of it, whether they want to be part of advancing sustainability as kind of a personal set of values, or if they have specific issues on their property that they are excited that this could help address.
Yeah, and I'll just say, I was pretty skeptical about that at the onset of when we started doing this private landowner type work. But there is a lot of folks who are really just committed to serving and beautifying our environment and sustainability and things like that. And there has, yeah, surprisingly, to me at least, it was surprising the amount of uptake that we've had. And the other thing I will say on the financial side, depending on the community, some landowners can receive a reduction in either their stormwater, if there's a stormwater utility on a stormwater bill, or if that is under a water and sewer district, then sometimes they can get a reduction on their sewer bill. So likely that does not offset the cost of the time and everything, and it is done more out of a desire for improvement of the environment.
Yeah, I think that one of the mistakes that we feel like we see a lot of folks making who are doing these kinds of programs is trying to lead with the financial argument with landowners, and it ends up kind of putting you into more of a transactional relationship with the landowner.
And I guess we didn't answer, we do not compensate them for the use of the property, just to be clear on that.
Wonderful, thank you both. And the next question, how did you determine your guaranteed max pricing? It seems like it would be a variable based on the types of projects chosen.
Yeah, it is, and that's why we have to find the projects. So we set that is the basis of that was what MMSD had available for their funds. So we looked at it and said, well, okay, I think we can do projects that are $3 a gallon. And we know some of them are going to be more, and some of them are going to be less. But we think we can make it all work. So it's really, there's history in Milwaukee about what it costs per gallon, and this was reasonably close to what the constructed costs were for those. So yeah, and then it's on us. It's incumbent on us as the private partner to find those high value, low cost projects to offset the ones that are more costly, more expensive.
Wonderful, thank you, Jim. And the next question, can you tell us about some of the Milwaukee projects that have been completed or nearly completed? What type of green infrastructures have been used?
Yeah, so I will say we have we definitely have a bias towards doing surface green infrastructure. So bioretention basins is something we advocate for just because of the co-benefits that are associated with that we value. So we have a number of bioretention basins, but we also have some subsurface storage work that is associated with some of the projects. Yeah, so it varies. We've done, we subsidize some green roofs that the landowners have decided that they want to actually pay the additional cost above what we could pay. But it's a lot of surface bioretention or wetland type of work is what we really try to do.
Do you want to talk about the intersect arts? Okay.
Yeah, and April is prompting me to talk about one particular project. So, so there's a project, Intersect Arts, which is a reuse of vacant land that a local entrepreneurial type person has decided he wants to utilize those vacant properties for a public art, and so the stormwater is a portion of that. It's somewhat water centric. All of his art and so forth is water centric. So we're working with him to build a bioretention basin. It will have sculptures placed in and around the bioretention basin. And then he has gotten additional funding for a covered area where the community can gather and do public artwork together. And so it's a pretty neat project.
Wonderful. And so the last question of the day, what are the key advantages in having a private partner implement rather than an MMSD staff?
Yeah, I think the key, some of the key things here, now, don't get me wrong, we work very closely with the MMSD staff, but having a private partner, we are just able to be a lot more nimble, I guess I would say. We're able to bring whatever resources we need at the time they're needed. Procurement from a public entity can be difficult. So if you have a subcontractor that has a specific skill that you need to bring on, we can do that very efficiently, whereas the public entity needs to go through a public process and so forth. And additionally, I think just the ups and downs of the work. So for example, we were in a phase where we were doing a lot of project origination and looking for projects. So we had one set of staff that was doing that with a certain skill set, and then that time has now passed. So that person is on to a different project. Whereas if that unique skill set maybe doesn't transfer as easily within an entity like MMSD. So yeah, I think that's probably one of the bigger things, is that ability to be nimble and bring resources more quickly is probably the biggest thing. Let's see, April, is there anything you want to add to that?
Just the other thing that I think I'd mentioned earlier, that they were looking for expertise with real estate, that they didn't feel like they had. So that was an important part of why they selected working with us.
Great. A huge thank you to both April and Jim for sharing their expertise with us today. Following this webinar, each of you will receive a follow-up email with the slides from today, as well as a link to the recording. We also ask that you please complete the webinar evaluation so you can let us know your thoughts on today's session, as this helps us plan future webinars on topics that are important to you. Thank you all, and we hope to see you at future EFCN events.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, Jim.
Bye.
Thank you.